Tom, don't know if you happen to hear any Pierre Fitzgibbon when we spoke earlier this afternoon.
I was given extensive notes by our incredible Alex, who prepared really a great summary for me. So I had to go with that because I was doing other work.
Yeah, she's waving like the Queen when you said her name, just so you know. So, we talked about a lot of different things here, including what he's going to do as economy minister, obviously the energy situation with hydro. But then at one point, Natasha asked this. So take a listen to this, Tom.
We'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the fact that you have seen your fair share of controversy having to do with ethics issues. Is that all behind you now?
Oh, it was behind me a long time ago.
Nothing more to say on the subject?
Absolutely not.
So, Tom, just to be fair, you do have to bring it up. It was an issue, but there you go.
Yeah, I mean, when you offer somebody to say it's in the past, he's not going to disagree, right? And I think that's exactly what Fitzgibbon is hoping. But he has made the papers for the past 2 days as well. And so that's not in the past, that's right now. So there are certain things that are going to continue to be asked of him because he's an immensely wealthy man who has interest in a lot of different things. Now, he's gone from having a personal acquaintance handle his trust, his blind trust, and it's gone over to a banking institution, which is probably a more neutral choice. But again, he's handing out money to things that he's invested in, whether or not he's actually making current investment choices because of those blind trusts. And is that enough? And there will continue to be issues involving Mr. Fitzgibbon, who never sees a problem with it. And from Mr. Legault, it's always been a bit of a blind spot. So the two of them together, good thing that the journalists are there doing their jobs.
So I will ask you what you think. So he's got all these titles, right? Economy, energy, innovation, Montreal, whatever. And I'm wondering to myself, the story that broke last week, and Sophie Brochu was pretty clear about it when she said, look, and she didn't point him out by name. She just said, if the government makes this too difficult, right, if the differences become irreconcilable, she sees herself leaving. What do you think? Because he seems to me like a pretty strong character.
He's a very strong character. He's the boss, right? He's always been the boss. Ask anybody, talk to people who have worked with this guy since he became a minister. He handles his ministerial responsibilities as if he was running a mom and pop operation and he was the pop. And he just makes all the decisions. And people say, well, actually, there are procedures to do this. He says, I've already decided, that type of character. And that's going to get him into trouble as well. So, because there are reasons that you set things up differently. Hydro Quebec isn't a flight of fancy. It exists as a public institution, a public utility created by a statute, a law of the National Assembly, run by a board of directors appointed under a rigorous process, and they make the decisions about what Hydro Quebec's going to do. Now, when it became clear that Fitzgibbon wanted to be in charge of Hydro Quebec, people around Legault were a bit stuck. So they came up with this wishful solution, and I'm doing air quotes as I say solution, because they're going to put, two juniors around the table. They're going to put the environment minister there, the Indigenous Affairs minister there. They don't carry any weight whatsoever. And Legault, Fitzgibbon, and Brochu will be there. But Brochu is not a minister. She shouldn't be part of a ministerial committee. She's the president and chief executive officer of Hydro Quebec. And so she's beholden to her board of directors under a law. And so this is where the thing's going to break down, because once again, what Fitzgibbon is saying is, I don't care what the law says. I've got to be the one to make all of these decisions. And, you heard it in the stuff that he was saying today. So we're going to see how it plays out. I don't think it's going to end well. I think that Sophie Brochu is gone by Christmas.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. How long?
Wow,
that soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they're going to start putting, sticks in her spokes and trying to make decisions for her and say, voyons donc. C'est le gouvernement. There was one sentence in my notes from Alex where he said, "Oh yeah, but she's there, but these are government decisions." So that's the way he views everything. Now that I'm in government, I get to decide everything, so I really don't care.
But here's someone who's top CEO, top female CEO, maybe in North America. I mean, she just won an award recently, I think, Tom, for something. I mean,
highly respected.
How bad would that look for the government to have her walk away?
Well, there is this strong misogynist streak in Legault's government, period, in his handling of the women, in his cabinet in particular, over the past 4 years. Doesn't seem to matter a bit to the average voter, but I do think that this one might stick a little bit more.
Okay.
Speaking of things that are sticking, we were talking about the ethics commissioner. So there's word that the ethics commissioner could ask Christopher Skeet, France-Hélène Duranceau, and Bernard Drinville to part with their companies.
And this is the work. This is not inappropriate. I mean, this is actually how the game is played.
Right.
So you go to cabinet, and some of the things that you have to do before you can even get sworn in You have to resign. You cannot be on the board of directors of any legal person. So any corporate entity of any kind, you have to step down, even if it's a charity. I was on the board of several charities when I became a minister, and we're back in the day of faxes, and I had to get a fax from each one confirming that I had in fact left the board of directors before I could get sworn in. Here it's simply a case of saying, okay, you have these private interests, they could possibly interfere, so you're either going to have to do like we just talked about, put them in a blind trust, or otherwise, dispose of them because you don't want to have that coming up while you're a minister. It's a way of helping ministers avoid the conflict of interest problems that Pierre Fitzgibbon has repeatedly had.
I was just going to say that's what he had to do, right? He had to step away until the relationships were dissolved.
Well, he was found to have, by the ethics commissioner, he was found to have broken the law a first time, and then Legault, sloughed it off, and then a second time, and then on the third time, Legault said, "Well, okay, we're in a bit of a problem here. You're going to have to sit this one out." Sort of like go to the penalty box for a couple of minutes. So he was out of cabinet for a little while, but ask anybody who was in the government, he still had very much Legault's ear, even though he no longer had the title of minister. And then Legault swore him back in as a minister as soon as he could.
Yeah, he doesn't like, by the way, when you bring that up. I remember the time we interviewed him when this was a scandal. Same kind of reaction today, like, you know what? No, I'm not talking about it. It's done. It's over, and let's move on.
But it's not. It's still in the news.
So maybe we shouldn't be that surprised.
It's still in the news, and it actually happened. When you repeatedly break the law and you're a minister, you get to talk about it.
All right, let me ask you one other thing. So Stats Can, Natasha was just going through some figures earlier on. Census report found that most immigrants to Quebec speak French. The biggest racialized communities are Black and Arab. A majority of immigrants to Quebec had only French as their first official language spoken. Does the government look at this and go, I didn't know we were doing this well?
No, because it's so complicated. This is like the old story about there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. Anybody in Quebec who is on the PQ side or on the Quebec Solidaire side or on the CAQ side will be able to pick and choose statistics to say French is in terrible trouble in Montreal. And then you talk to experts in the field and they say, no, this is actually what's happening. Most of the immigrants come in. The only official language that they have of French and English, the only one they have is French, the majority. And yes, there are 20 or some odd percent who, of the two official languages, have only English when they get here because they've got their other first language and they picked up some English along the way. But their kids are going to go to French school and they're going to have to pick up French to be able to work here. So this is, this incredible mega bogeyman that has become an established truth in Quebec that you're not even allowed to question, otherwise you get pilloried.
I'd like to know what you think about the fact that I think it was 29% of Quebecers, when asked about their ethnic or cultural background, said Canadian. 29%.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about questions on a survey like that, right? This is the census. And one of the things they also did is they reversed the order of some of the questions. And it completely skewed the answer because you're setting it up in a certain way. So census after census, the questions had been drafted the same way and then asked in the same order, because it does condition the answer. So if you talk to somebody like Jack Jedwab, he'll explain to you what happened. They flipped the order of some of the questions, and they started pointing to a different result, but without taking into account the fact that they had asked the questions in a different order. So again, when we talk so often about the Canadian government not paying attention to management details, that should have been an immediate flashing light on the dashboard of somebody at the PCO saying, hold on, they want to start messing around with the questions on the census. We're going to wind up with data that's going to be interpreted as going one way. There's no way of proving that. Just stick with the questions in the same order and the same questions we've always had, so we can compare apples with apples and oranges with oranges. No. They made fruit salad. And so this is the thing about the Canadian government right now under Trudeau. He's a great international representative for us. He's out there on the world stage. I think he does a marvelous job in so many different ways. But in terms of actually running the place, it's really being run into the ground. And this is just another example of something that was done really quite badly.
Can't we have both, Tom? Can't we?
But can you imagine what a boring slogan it would be? Vote for our party and you'll get good, competent public administration. Yeah. We don't want that. Mm-hmm. We want razzle dazzle. We want, the Looney Tunes approach of Pierre Poilievre or the watch me, look at my socks of Justin Trudeau. So yes, the competent administrator party has yet to be created.
Meanwhile, last story, and I thought this was interesting. I was kind of reading on this today, certainly in the French press. So Eric Duhem, he in trouble, Tom? I love the fact that people in the Conservative Party, we know how badly it turned out for them in terms of no elected members. The idea that he spent too much time trying to appeal to Anglos, is he in trouble?
It's Looney Tunes. It's not serious. These are people who know nothing about politics. Some of them started losing it in the lights. They started believing they were going to get elected to the National Assembly, and when none of them did, they had to blame somebody because they were amazing. They should have been elected. That can't be their fault. And this is where some of them are trying to go after Duhem. What is interesting is, one, as you just said, they're trying to say he spent too much time mollycoddling the English-speaking community. And the other thing that he's being told is he wasn't a true conservative. He didn't dig in enough. He didn't work along the lines of the Montreal Economic Institute. By the way, there's a backbencher, and he's upset at being a backbencher. He thought he was due for cabinet last time, and certainly this time, a guy named Yuri Chassin, whose riding is the St. Jerome area in the Lower Laurentians. And he was really upset. And there was word that he was actually thinking of jumping over and becoming the Mulcair Sanson for Eric Duhem. But apparently he put out a tweet today saying he's very disappointed, but he's going to stick around anyway.
I wonder, party leaders have walked the plank for less, Tom, over the years. So I don't know.
Well, you and I both knew Adrian Pouliot, his predecessor. Yeah. And I'm going to pull this number out of thin air, but I'm probably not very far off. I think the best that the Conservatives ever got under Mr. Pouliot, who worked hard and put a lot into it, I think that the best they got was 0.5%.
Yeah, that's true.
And Duhem brought that up to 13%. By the way, you get $2, right, every year for every vote you got. So he got about 500,000 votes and then some. So he's going to get $1 million a year for the next 4 years. He's going to get $4 million of taxpayers' money, where you can rent an office and hire some good, competent staff and have them, doing a little bit of research. He can hold his regular press conferences, even if they're not going to be within the confines of the National Assembly. He can certainly have them in an office tower across the street. Some of the journalists will cross the street to talk to him.
Oh, I'm sure
and, he's going to be able to be in the news that way.
Tom Mulcair, back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at about 7:40. Thank you, Tom.